Hi, I'm Josephine Moon. Welcome to the Hot Seat. Today I have with me Sydney author Sandie Docker. Welcome, Sandie.
Hi, Josephine. Thank you so much for having me.
So great to have you here. Um, you have a new book coming out, which is really exciting. Can you tell us a bit about it?
Sure. The new book coming out is The Redgum River Retreat with a fabulous red cover. Red's my favorite color, so I'm very happy about that. And it's about single mum Sarah and her young daughter Melody, who are both really talented musicians, but after an accident, they're left physically and emotionally scarred. And Melody refuses to speak, and Sarah can't bring herself to play her beloved cello. So their world that was once full of joyous sound and music is now silent. And in the aftermath of the trauma, Sarah finds an old photo album belonging to her grandmother, Rosalie, who was a pioneering photojournalist in her time. And the album is full of photos from the Snapshots from Home League program during World War II, and all of which were taken in and around the town of Redgum River. And there appears to be two young soldiers who feature quite heavily in these photos. And Sarah thought that she knew everything about her grandmother's past, but she's never heard her speak of the Snapshots program, never heard her speak of Redgum River, and she's desperate to learn more about Rosalie's past and the two men in the photos. When she learns that Redgum River is also home to a music retreat that might be able to help Melody find her voice again, Sarah, Melody, and Rosalie all head off to Redgum River. And when they arrive, they find that the secrets of Rosalie's past have a lot more bearing on the present than any of them could ever have expected. And it's a story of love, war, hope, heartache, healing, and the magic of music.
Sounds amazing. I love your stories. You're always such a great storyteller, and you weave together all of those, generational themes and relationships so well, and create these beautiful little small town. Uh, no, I'm going to say adventures, not really an adventure, but these small town kind of, lives, and
Mm-hmm.
and really focus on how important those lives are as well. So you always do that really, really well. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Thank you.
When was the moment you knew that you wanted to be a writer?
Yeah, I didn't start out wanting to be a writer. I hear lots of authors talk. I go to talks all the time by authors. And, usually it's like, well, I started writing when I was 7 and I wrote my first book when I was 9 and, all those sorts of things. And that wasn't me. I hated reading as a child, which is, I know, sacrilegious to admit as an author, just wasn't my bag. So it was never, ever on my radar to even think about becoming a writer. And it wasn't until my late teens that I discovered a love of reading. And then it wasn't until I was at university studying Mandarin, of all things, in a Bachelor of Arts program. And we were doing a translation component to the course in Mandarin. And we were translating what are the equivalent of Aesop type fables in Mandarin into English. And my lecturer then said to me, Sandie, I think you've got a knack for storytelling, because with translation you can't translate word for word. There's a certain nuance and art to it. And so she suggested that I should have a crack at writing, and I kind of laughed at her, thinking that I was never a reader, I can't possibly be a writer. And so I ignored that for quite some time. And then it was when I was living in London and I was really homesick, going from a small town in, New South Wales to London, big city lights. And I was missing that small town feeling and that small town community. And that was when I first put pen to paper and started writing, basically to deal with my homesickness.
I love that story. I can't believe I've known you for this long and I've never heard that story. I think that's fantastic. And I actually love the fact that you, as a young child, weren't really into reading, because I think, I've been doing a lot of reading lately on, children who learn differently and maybe have difficulty reading. And it's actually really hopeful and helpful to hear people share that story of, actually it didn't click with me early on, but it did, at the right moment and the right time. So I love that. Thank you.
Yeah. And it wasn't that I couldn't read. It was
Yeah.
I just wasn't interested in it. I was that kid that would rather be outside playing in the dirt. It just wasn't on my radar. But as you can see from the stash behind me, I'm certainly making up for it now with my reading. So
Absolutely. That's really cool. So when was the moment that you knew that you needed to write this book? Because authors always have lots of stories in their head going on, but you have to choose one. So what was it about this one that made you want to write it?
Yeah, so I think like a lot of authors, I have a little notebook where I jot down ideas as they come to me. And as you would know, Joe, it's very rare that it's one idea that sparks a novel. It's usually a coming together of a couple of different ideas. So I had a few different ideas jotted down in this notebook, and I was up for a contract renewal with Penguin, and I had to pitch another couple of books, and I had pitched a few things and they liked them, and it was actually Penguin that said, that's the one we want next. So it wasn't actually by design that this was the next one to write, but the pandemic probably had a little bit of an influence on it, because there's a lot of mother-daughter relationship in this particular book. And within that, you know, Sarah, our protagonist, is trying so hard to help her daughter who's got these challenges, and she doesn't know how to help her properly. And so there's an awful lot of that mother guilt and that mother desperation of trying to, you know, save, I guess, your child from a, you know, a burden and a tragic situation. And I have a child who has type 1 diabetes. So when the pandemic hit us, you know, a simple cold for her is a big deal. So when the pandemic hit and I was freaking out, what happens if she gets COVID, and trying to keep her safe in that time, you know, and the guilt that I couldn't keep her wrapped up in the house all the time. It was all of that. And so I think that really fed into, that was the right book at the right time, because I was going through that, the desperation that Sarah goes through wanting to help your child and keep them safe.
Mm. Well, I'm sure all that, you know, personal experience with those emotions will have made its way to the page really authentically. Yeah.
I hope so. I hope so. And when Ali read it the first time, that Ali's our publisher, she said to me, there's a lot of you in this one, I think, Sandie. So, yeah.
Nice. That's lovely. While you were writing the book, are there things that you did or you need to do, or in general that you need to do to get your heads into that writing space? So I know a lot of writers, including myself, had a lot of trouble concentrating during the pandemic while we were writing. What did you do to support yourself and get yourself in that space?
Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? Because people assumed that because we were stuck at home, you know, through all those lockdowns and trying not to be social, that would give us a lot of time and space to write. But the underlying stress of the situation kind of shut down the creativity for a lot of authors that I know. And I certainly found it difficult to find the motivation uh, to sit down and write and not have what was going on in the world impact that creative process, because I didn't want to write about the pandemic, and then, you know, it's going to be a while, I think, before people want to read about the pandemic. And so to sort of block that out and focus on, you know, a happy loving story was quite difficult. What I did find really helpful was connecting with other writers, and I was Zooming every morning with Claudine Tinellis, who is a podcaster and writer, and I was Zooming every afternoon with Tabitha Bird, who's another Queensland author. And that really helped, because, you know, you're there, you have to do it. So it was kind of like forcing myself, but gosh, it was like pulling teeth. It really was.
Yeah. So did you both sat, I'm fascinated by this. Did you both sit on Zoom and write together?
Yep. Yeah, so just like you and I are here now, we'd have a little chat and moan about the world and our families and the, you know, husband not putting the toilet seat down and those sorts of things. And then we would mute ourselves for an hour and we would write, and then come back and chat about the writing. So
Yeah, cool. In neurodivergent world, that's called body doubling, and it's really helpful. Yeah, to
right.
keep on track and stay connected.
Yeah.
Well
And it's really helpful just having that, I'm not going to say pressure, that motivation of having somebody else there writing, and also having that somebody to talk to go, you know what, today I've got no words down. What's wrong with me? And they're like, that's okay, don't worry. You know, that support was really, really helpful.
Yeah, great. So in your life, you've clearly read lots and lots and lots of books, all many behind you, which I'm sure is just a fraction of what you've read.
Yeah, it actually wraps all the way around. So
Wow. you could kind of open it. You could have like open days where you open your door. People can come in and just like browse and touch them and look at them all. So out of all the books you've read, has there ever been one where you've read that and just gone, wow, I really wished I had written this book?
That's a really interesting question. And it's quite a difficult one because on the one hand, like pretty much every book I read, I'm like, God, I wish I could write like that. But on the other hand, if I attempted to write that particular story, it wouldn't have come out the same way because as writers, we bring our own personal experience to it. But the one book that really has stayed with me and really showed me what beautiful writing is and what I, when I grow up, I want to be, is The Red Tent by Anita Diamond. And it blew me away, this story. And I'm like, I could never write historical fiction. I don't think I'm smart enough to write historical fiction, and the research would probably knock me over. But this is just a masterful piece. And the prologue is one that has just stayed with me forever. So I wish I could write a story like this.
I've heard a lot about that book, but I have never read it. So I might have to add it to my list of to reads or to listens, because I listen to everything. So I'll add it to my list. Thank you for that. I love getting recommendations from people. How do you, getting back to your book, how do you want your readers to feel when they get to the end of your story?
I hope that they feel like they've been on an emotional journey. I think particularly the stories that you and I write, Josephine, it's all about the emotion, and we want our readers to connect with the characters and feel like that they're friends and that they're going on this journey with them. And whether that's laughing or crying or getting angry or whatever it is, I want them to have some kind of an emotional reaction to the story. And I guess when they close the cover, when they finish or turn the audiobook off, I want them to have felt like maybe a little bit like they've been through the emotional ringer, because I do like to do that to my readers when possible, but that the characters will stay with them and that they'll think about them long after.
Yep, absolutely. If your book was lucky enough to get picked up and adapted to screen, who would you like to cast in the main role?
Isn't that the $1 million question? Eh?
Fun question.
And I'm going to tell you this, any writer who says they don't think about their books being adapted is lying to you. We all dream of that. We all think about that. I find it really hard, though, when I think about my main characters, to really sort of knuckle down and go, yep, that's who should play Sarah, or that's who should play Rosalie. And I don't know why it is that I have so much trouble. Maybe because in my head, they're so fully formed that if I look at an actor and go, yeah, but they're not quite right. I have a lot more fun trying to cast my supporting characters than I do with my main characters. So we've got Ryan in this, who's the therapist at the music retreat. He's a bit of a potential interest for Sarah. And I'm thinking, sorry, I've said the wrong name there. This is the first time I've talked about my book. Joshua is the therapist. And I'm thinking, Henry Golding for him. There's a brother in the book, and he's a really lovely character, although he's very minor. That's Ryan. And I'm thinking Hugh Sheridan in that role. So yeah, but casting the main characters, gosh, I find it difficult. And because I do the two timelines, so if we were casting Rosalie, we need a 20-year-old Rosalie, and we also need a 90-year-old Rosalie. So I've got to think of how they would fit together too. So I know that's not a very helpful answer, but
no, it's great. And I think that's actually really cool to have different ages of them, because that's twice the fun, really, isn't it? You've got more people you can cast. It's really
so maybe when the book, maybe once people have read the book, they can send me their ideas of who they think should play the main characters.
That's a really good idea. I think we should make some kind of game out of that. Getting people to cast our books for us. So getting on to now, what are you currently reading? And then what are you working on right now?
I usually have 2 books on the go at one time, one in paperback and one in audio, and usually quite different in genres, just so that I don't get muddled up with the stories. So the audiobook I'm listening to at the moment is Fiona McIntosh's crime series, and it's her new crime one called Dead Tide. So I'm listening to that on audio, and I'm currently reading With Love from Wish & Co by Minnie Drake, and I'm not far off. I'm not far off finishing that one. I'm getting to that point where I'm like, it's about to blow up in her face. I know it's about to blow up in her face. Oh my God, it's coming. I'm at that point in the story. So.
That book has been on my to be read for a while now too. So thanks for reminding me. I'll bump it up the list.
Yeah, it's a good read.
And try and predict what the blowing up is going to be.
Well, you know what it's going to be. It's just going to be like, when is it coming and how is it coming? So.
Yeah, right.
And
what are you working on?
Yeah, and as for me, I've got to get a draft of the next one of the 2024 release into my publisher soon. So I'm doing a little bit of research on that one and trying to bring that into a story that actually makes some coherent sense. So,
can we have any hints or sneak peeks on that one?
Funnily enough, I'm going to head down the music road again with this one, but it's going to be about a choir. And it's really hard for me because until I finish it, I don't actually know where it's going to go, but we're going to have the dual timeline again. We're going to have to, the choir has to save a women's retreat, and the past thread is going to be woven in with somebody who is forced to give up their child, who doesn't want to, and that child is then going to make a reappearance in the present thread, I think.
Well, sounds like another winner to me. Thank you so much for joining me in the hot seat. I've loved having a chat to you. I always love chatting to you, and I can't wait to read your book. I hope it goes brilliantly for you.
Thank you, Jo. Thank you so much for having me, and hopefully we'll cross paths because your book's coming out not long after mine, and I'm looking forward to that one too.
Thank you. Hopefully, yeah, we'll see each other somewhere on the trail. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Jo.